Okay. Hello, everyone. Well, great to be here, and I'm sure everybody is well-fed and well-sated. It's great to be on the afternoon session. Pre-lunch is always tough. Everyone's a bit hangry, so I'm very glad to be here doing this. So a quick introduction. My name is Nikki Dawson, and I lead marketing in EMEA for Highspot. I joined Highspot about a year ago, and I built out the marketing function from 2 people to 11. So we've had rapid growth, and that's over a number of functions. So field marketing, demand gen, and content. So where's the product marketing, you're probably thinking? Well, our product marketing function is actually based in our headquarters, and that's in Seattle. So we work very closely with them, but we don't have a product marketer in EMEA. But we have a lot of customers who are product marketers. So I talk to a lot of you, or similar yous, all the time. And I certainly know a bit about content based on my background and what I've done in the last 20 years. So I'm going to talk to you today about delivering content with context. And context is the real nuance. So as Catherine said, I'm going to talk you through a simple equation for what we feel can really help you get from random acts of product marketing to having that much more strategic place at the table. And I think what Catherine talked about at the keynote this morning was, how do you prove that strategic worth of product marketing? It's that iceberg intangibility that you're working hard all the time to do, and we've got an equation that's going to help you with that. Okay, so first of all, a bit about Highspot. Put simply, companies use Highspot to improve the performance of their sales and marketing teams. So we're the world's #1 sales enablement platform. We've recently been marked as leader in the Forrester Wave for sales content solutions. And we are a Series F scale-up. What's brilliant is I can tell my kids that I work for a unicorn, which makes them very happy and very confused at the same time that that's a job. So fundamentally, we help you to execute your strategic programs and initiatives. So by that, it could be a product launch or a rebrand, or perhaps you've done an M&A. And we're really helping you do that much more effectively. I'm going to start with a depressing fact. I'm sorry. It's depressing times at the moment, isn't it? So Neil Patel, the content and marketing guru, he's quite well known and was ranked in Forbes as one of the top 30 marketing leaders. He did some research a couple of years ago. Up to 70% of content produced for sales team goes unused. That's really, really quite depressing, I'm afraid to say. And we've recently done some research which actually corroborates with this, so don't get too depressed. So we've just launched our annual European State of Sales and Marketing Alignment. Really want to understand a bit more about how sales and marketing teams align, or if they don't align, what is the impact? And what was really interesting is, sales and marketing are driving business growth. Their alignment is absolutely key to success. And we ran a report and did research across France, Germany, and UK with 750 sales and marketers. So what was really interesting was content chaos, as we call it, was a theme, a really strong theme about the challenges. So as you can see, 45% of marketers said one of their biggest barriers to success is too much content. I think everyone feels that pain quite a lot about having too much content. And then on the other side, 37% of sellers said they're not confident they have the most up-to-date information in sales assets. So we're still very much dealing with the pain of content as a whole. And I know as well, as product marketers, this is one of your top 3 areas that you'll focus on. Number 2, so you create a lot of sales collateral and updating internal documents all the time. And it's not only you creating that content, if only that was the case. So content is created across all of marketing, and that's a challenge as well. And sales have often been known to kind of do their own hacks on content, which I'm sure you've had that horrible moment where you've been in a room seeing sales present with one of their hideous Frankendecks, I can say this, and that's a challenge as well. If they're going off creating their own content because they don't think you're providing what you need, it's a big, big challenge. So what we're seeing is more and more content being created. Well, why is this happening? So the real challenge is content is being produced in a vacuum because we don't know what are the business results around it. There's no way to measure and really understand. So people get in a bit of a spiral around this, and more content is created. And that is more and more effort and more pain and hard work as well. And that's a challenge. And the sales teams are really, really straining to cope with this. And I think it's important to think about the context of the world we're in as well at the moment with this. So we're facing increased buyer complexity. During the pandemic, Forrester ran a report to see what was the difference in the number of buyers in the buying circle. It's gone up from 17 to 27. 27 people you need to influence. So you think about all those different stakeholders, what are the needs of the content, where they come into that journey and the conversations you need to have. It's tough. The new economic uncertainty. I mean, are we beyond saying the new normal now? I think we have gone into that cliff with the recession. We might not officially be there, but I think we're all feeling pretty battered after the pandemic, throwing in the situation as well. That's a lot to deal with. I think, pipelines are slowing down for everybody. It's a real challenge. And then we've got intensifying competitive pressures. Personally for me as a head of marketing, the number of calls I'm getting across so many channels from sales teams and SDRs, more and more people are calling me, and more people I'm not answering to at all. I think, you can get your daggers ready, be prepared with competitors, but you really need to be able to react in the moment and have that right content when someone else is talking to a new competitor or has been approached by someone else. So what smart leaders are really starting to do is to think about how they can pull people together, get everybody on the same page to fight through that complexity, and really equip their teams to comfortably feel they have the right content around that. And I think more than ever, it's essential that you're doing this in this environment and really helping your sellers. But what do? We throw more. Yes, more. More content. We'll throw in a bit of training because the content doesn't quite land. We might set up a dashboard just to make it easier. We might create some sales plays, which is good, just explain a bit more about it. Maybe we'll have a bit of insights about why they should use that content, a few tools to throw in. And this is all with the best of intention. I think technology has enabled a lot, but I think it's the context of how is that helping the seller? What is that really meaning as a whole? How can they utilize all of this as a whole? And I think what is still a depressing statistic is 20% of sales teams are performing well, and 80% are struggling still. They're either not achieving target or they're below target. It's kind of the frozen middle and bottom as a whole. So you really need to help out even more when the situation is you've only got 20% of your sales team performing. Okay, so let's give a bit more context around the impact of what this means. I've talked to you about the 70% stat on content unused. I'm really throwing depressing stats today, but I promise you there's going to be an upside with the equation. So 80% of training is forgotten within a few days. So if you think about all that money and all that time that goes into sales training, we've moved away from having big all-day sessions with PowerPoints and expecting people to go off. It's a lot that's been forgotten. And on top of that, 50% of reps are attaining their quota. So we've got an underperforming, unconfident team who are not meeting their quotas. And on top of that, 35% of sellers churn. And actually, something to note is that's over 3 times the average for another industry. So every time you're getting a new seller in, you've got to retrain them up, got to get them used to content as a whole. And what we're seeing with this when we're talking to our customers is this is such hard work. They're exhausted. They're trying their hardest, throwing more at it, and I think they're clearly seeing that the sales team are getting less and less confident around what they're doing. Alignment is not happening as a whole. But ultimately, that is impacting the buyer experience as well, and targets are not being met when everyone is just completely overwhelmed and content is not what it needs to be. And then it's your mission, this is the hard thing, to make it all make sense for your sales team. And that's really hard when you're trying to make sense of what is working, what isn't working, as a whole. Okay, I'm not Carol Vorderman, so I'm not going to do any maths equations just to disappoint you potentially on this, but I just want to talk you through this equation and ways we can think about this as well. So content really needs context to land effectively. Okay, so what is context? It can mean many, many different things to many different people. Well, as a baseline, perhaps you can start with having an internal description. So really understanding, okay, well, what is this and how do I use it? And then it would be great if you could add some kind of Amazon-style recommendations. When we're buying products and services, it's great to know if it's worked for somebody else. But most importantly, if that was your peers as a seller telling you, this is great, this worked for me here, this is something you should be using. It's also handy to be able to have the ability to have recommended content and try and understand what assets pair well together. So as you carry on that journey with the sales process, you're able to quickly use content that works. What's really great if you're able to have engagement insights, because how is your end user really engaging with this content? Can people really say that? But if you know that it's working with your audience, it's great content. And then we talked a bit about before having a sales play. So the methodology we use for our sales play is know, say, show, do. And that's really, really simple, just to break down what you should be doing with your content and how you talk about it and what you do with it next in your conversations. And understanding how it fits into the bigger picture as well, because we all need context. You know, if content is coming at us from all different angles, you really need to know how to use it. And then if you're able, the dream, integration with CRM. So I think getting into the environment where sales tend to be, or most of the time, if they're using CRM, is really thinking about how you can signpost what has worked well with other opportunities. I think the big challenge here for product marketers and marketing as a whole, we tend to only really be able to tap into the top left, and that's being able to give an internal description, and that makes it really tough for that content to land. Okay, so I've given a lot of depressing stats, and I think we can see the equation that we ultimately get is when we have content and we don't have context, it's chaos. But what if we could change that? What if we were able to provide confidence by having content and context together? So what does that mean if we kind of segregate chaos and confidence together as a whole? Well, in a world of chaos, people hide content. Everybody tends to default to their desktop. They'll squirrel things away, they've managed to find something, they'll keep a deck and they'll keep using it again and again. It's really hard to sort of change those behavioral patterns as a whole. But if you're able to have confidence, you can find it, content of any type, in a one-stop shop. You can have that content center that you can access anywhere, on the go, and you know you don't have to hoard and hide the good stuff. With chaos comes the fact you have a very high leverage of low-value content. Again, people are just going to pick the low-hanging fruit. What's at the top of the box? What's at the top of the SharePoint? You know, maybe you're able to store stuff in somewhere a bit cleaner to find, like the CMS or a sales enablement platform, but it's going to be harder. But when you have it in a space that works for you, it really can enable you to leverage that high-value content consistently. Often in the case of chaos, it's that dated, off-brand, inaccurate materials. And that's really painful for buyers. If you think about it, someone could have some pricing from a couple of years ago. When it comes to sign the contract, oops, bit of a mistake there. And that's a hard one, but you're going to know and balance that risk with confidence that you've got that updated, on-brand, accurate materials. With chaos, there comes pain and critics. So I think sales don't tend to be happy and make a point that they're simply not getting the content they need. But that can be turned around, and you can be the advocate for content when it is with confidence. And finally, and this is something I have experienced many, many times in my career, marketing is search as a service. So I can't tell you the amount of times I've got those emails in my inbox. Can you tell me where I can find? Or a ping. And then you sort of take a step back and saying, do you remember that event where we showed this to you? Or the webinar, or the podcast? You know where the content is. But marketing presently ends up being a bit of an order taker and a server and signposting to the content. But you can turn that around, and marketing can really become that trusted partner with confidence with your content. Okay, so I've got a quick 3 framework that's going to talk to you about that equation for 3 areas, which is consolidate, quantify, and collaborate. And we'll start with consolidate. Okay, so you can store content in multiple places. It's often the case content could be in a box file or SharePoint, and I've been with organizations when there's been an acquisition, and it's been complete hell because everyone's got 2 different systems and finding it as a whole. What good looks like and what's better if you're able to get it, you know, on a sales enablement platform or a CMS or a DAM. But I think it's about that findability is absolutely key. If the sellers can find it quickly, that's great. That's a good starting point. If you're able to provide a marketing-driven content taxonomy, that's great. You've got a bit of structure and order. At least you're going to be able to find it quite quickly and can explain to sales where you need to find it. Fewer publishers, I think, really does help significantly. And then having your content integrated within the CRM system, again, really gets content to you where your sellers are. Better enables you for your content to find sellers so they can get it to them immediately. And actually thinking about that sort of initial end user sellers and having a driven content taxonomy as a whole. And then adding on top governance with multiple publishers adds another layer to really give more context. And then the beauty is if you can also integrate it with CRM and other sales tech, that's really, really powerful to be able to do that and get additional insight. I think on the panel this morning we were talking about Clue and the impact of that for product marketers. So being able to merge those two technologies together can have a powerful voice for you as a whole. But the challenge slightly is here that governance is rarely done effectively in companies. And this has caused a lot of frustrations for reps as a whole, and this is why we tend to have content chaos as a whole. With HighSpot, there's a real difference here because you're able to simply have ways to measure and track that content, have it governance, have it checked, have it proofed, so everything is fresh, accurate, and effective. And that means you can put together your content platform and your sales enablement in one go. You can really understand if your sellers are delivering on those strategic initiatives, how they're doing, where it's happening, and they can focus on that as well, which is important, rather spending time looking for content. And it's also the risk that it's going to be the wrong content. But by simply having the ability to add governance to it quite quickly and having one source of truth for your content, it can really turn around that pain of content chaos. Let's move on to Quantify. Okay, so good is about the internal on this, really. Having that understanding of how your sellers are really looking at the content. Are they viewing it? Are they sharing it? Have they got the ability to really download it? Because if you know someone's downloaded it, it must be of value. But also that ability to maybe see how long they're looking at it. It gives you a bit of a baseline. But when we're it better, it's really about how your buyers, how your customers are really, really viewing that content. So the ability to see external views, external shares, and if I take you back to that point about the number of buyers increasing, if you're able to see who in the buying cycle is engaging with your content, that is transformational. Downloads as well. It must be of value if someone is interested enough to read it and do something with it, how long they've looked at it. And then this is my favorite feature of HighSpot. The external page views. So imagine you've sent an amazing sales deck, your ability to see exactly which slides someone has looked at. You can then go and tailor your conversation off the back of that and really start engaging with your buyer and speeding up that process. But most importantly, it's about being able to attribute your content to your influenced revenue. So this is really where the magic happens and what I love as well. So again, on average with companies, it comes to the end of the quarter, you've got a strategic initiative, and you look back and see, okay, has it landed? And the challenge is, it is too late by then. That's the real problem. You can't go back and retrofit it as a whole. But what's great and what's brilliant about HighSpot is your content, your plays, your training. This can all be looked at in real time. So we have AI capabilities, something we call our enablement genomics, and we're able to see exactly how your content and pieces have influenced revenue. So you have that real-time insight to understand how your sellers are engaging and at what stage, and then all of those pieces can be tracked against wins, revenue, influence as a whole, and your whole ARR and pipeline. So that's extremely powerful. You can say explicitly which pieces of content have influenced which deals, and you really have a seat at the revenue table with that. And that's through having an AI-driven capability. And finally, on to Collaborate. Okay, I'm going to do a little experiment. I need your help. I want everybody to stand up, please. I promise I'm not going to do any yoga or breathing exercises or anything too strange for a Thursday afternoon. Okay, so this is a big question. How often do people collaborate with sales on content? So if you never collaborate with sales on content, can you sit down now, please? Brave man, thank you very much. 2 brave men there. Okay. If you sometimes collaborate with sales on content, can you sit down? Thank you for being so honest. Okay. So I'm taking everyone is standing is almost always or always collaborating with sales on content. Great, that's brilliant. Give yourselves a big round of applause. I think that's brilliant. Everyone's already doing this, so that's great. Okay. And I think this is the hardest one, really, because it's how you get to this collaboration, but also have the feedback loops and engagement with it as well. So I think what good looks like when it comes to this is having that very detailed, curated content, and the ability to do those one-time new content notifications, so you don't have to have the big razzmatazz and big launch and emails that don't get read and details. You're able to do that quite easily. Being able to do suggested content and use cases, really being able to see how that content has influenced through the sales journey. Having an editorial calendar, people will know what's coming up, they can see that, they can address it. Being able to have that content feedback loop, which is great, sharing it back. And then also content request automation can help you with content. But better, it really is that contextual guidance. It's going to help you with the cut-through with your content. Integration with prompts. So within Salesforce or Dynamics or what you're using, the ability to prompt, you've got a deal, you know you're head-to-head with another competitor, proof that that content has worked before in the same scenario. Having email templates with content links in, no more do you need to trust that your sales team are going to add a link at a certain point, but be able to shape and craft that content with links in embedded. Thinking about having an editorial board with sales, getting sales and marketing to partner from the outset, and having that ability to have peer-reviewed content. Because sales are competitive. They're going to want to know what someone else is doing has worked, and that is absolutely key. And this is the hard thing, the content amnesty. So I think this is the toughest one, and I mean, obviously, you're pretty much 50% of everyone's doing this in the room, which is great. But I think that ability to work with your sales team on the content they need to be successful is absolutely key to tip the equation from more to less. And I think its ability to have a tangible platform to have that conversation and to bring people together around content. And what I talked a bit about was those sales plays. That gives you, the context side, an opportunity to come together and shape that together and have that editorial board style conversation will really make the difference. Okay, so just to quickly recap what we talked about for those areas as a whole. Consolidate was really thinking about your governance and ensuring you can do that in an effective way. Technology obviously always helping you with that. Quantify was thinking about how you're measuring those external engagements and getting fresh content, effective content as a whole. And collaborating is continuing to do what most of you seem to be doing, working well with sales, but I think that magic of being able to have that content amnesty and really know with data what is actually working. I think there's that great quote, I don't quite know who did it as an author, but one given to writers, you know, sometimes you need to kill your darlings, but I think if you can kill your darlings with a bit of data, that's always going to stand. It can also help have conversations with sales about what they think is working versus what you think is working as a whole. Okay, so I've got 2 more slides. I think I've gone through in rapid time, so be ready for some questions. If you'd like to find out more about HighSpot, we have a booth. I think we're at booth 15 and 16, and obviously please come and talk to me. We've done this for many years for many customers. As I said, we're a unicorn in at Series F. This is just an example for one of our telco customers, how we've helped them provide context for their sellers as a whole. And if you'd like to find out a bit more about our thought leadership, you can obviously take a picture of our QR code. We've got some really interesting insights, so I'll just give you 2 more stats and facts. So 71% of the sales and marketers we surveyed said that they felt the lack of alignment was causing a negative impact on revenue. And 72% said that they will be investing in sales enablement to help overcome that in the coming year as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Nikki. That was great, and I think a really good exercise in showing empathy for a super, super important stakeholder of so many of ours. Let's jump into some of these questions. Top voted question, sales tend to be focused on the next deal and want the content that is needed for that particular deal. How do you serve the most appropriate content to them?
Yeah, good question. So I think if they know and have the insight of what has worked, you don't have to be sort of supplying stuff for that particular deal. And if you map that against your customers, the customer journey as well. So I think, again, because the ability in HighSpot, you have that recommended content, you can build a sales play around those scenarios. They get very used to going back and finding very quickly what worked and what used before. but also it's that recommendations that we serve up. So we do have that Amazon style recommendations for seller. It also lives within Salesforce. So in the end, it's not about sort of coaching and content for the deal. It's more about the individual as a whole and that accessibility to content that works.
Nice. And the second question, I think it'd be great. I know that product marketing isn't in your team, but you have a lot.
It is actually. Not in my team, but it sits within marketing.
Yes,
if that helps in the context.
Right. But then you also have the expertise of so many of your clients. When you see a PMM org that is separate from a sales enablement org, what have you seen about how they divide up responsibility? Where does one start and the other end?
That's a good question too. So, product marketing sits within areas. So ours personally sits within marketing, and sales enablement sits in our revenue strategy arm. I think it's a really coordinated dance, and I think someone mentioned before in their organization, every 9 months things change. And I think it's that partnership, as a whole. They have to come in together to cover it off. And think about it and collaborate along the way. So I think it has to be quite evolving and moving as a whole. But really for us, because it sits within marketing, they're an external partner, but for me, product marketing is the bridge to everybody, so it doesn't matter where they're based. Got
it, okay. And then I think a little bit about your offering as well, because I'm sure a lot of us are making buying decisions right now, but what's so useful about HighSpot versus something like Paperflight? What would you say is your differentiator, your value prop?
Well, I'm afraid I don't know about Paperflight, but if you come into the booth, I can have a little chat about that. But I'm very happy to tell you more about HighSpot afterwards, so I couldn't do a sort of competitive daggers comparison on that, unfortunately. But very welcome to answer some questions afterwards on that, and I can find out a bit more. So maybe we can go on to the next question.
Yeah. Or maybe what's like what do you think is like the superpower of HighSpot?
Oh, our superpower. Well, it's really being one unified platform. So unlike other competitors where they have really acquired to do so, we have a native platform. So as well as doing content, we equip, train, and coach. So if you think about what I talked about with the context there, it's really important that training is of value. So we've built out a training and coaching as part of our content as well. So as we grow within that, we're very assured having a native platform makes it a lot more end-user friendly from start to finish. So we grow with you as you grow and your requirements do.
Got it, okay. This next question is a bit about changing habits within the sales team. And I think a lot of us here tend to work with sales teams that are diverse. You've got older people who are used to a certain way of working and people who are used to the consumerization of technology. Do you have any advice or experience about how you get all these different types to actually gravitate to a content hub when maybe they tend to gravitate to their desktop or other types of tools?
Yeah, I like this question, particularly because we had our own sales kickoff back in February, and we had one of our customers talk. We often do this. They were in their 60s, and I have never seen an advocate like that. And I think it really was the competitive nature of sales. They had learned HighSpot and was the biggest evangelist. So I think sometimes we have a slight bias that it's going to be the case, it's going to be more resistance and harder. But I think, the challenge is people are still struggling, I think, to sell digitally. And I think people have to understand this is the option. And again, I think how we implement the product as a whole, we have a great set of training that enables within that. And I think people can quickly see the difference. One of the big pain points is it takes a lot of time to find content. So when people understand they're going to save time talking to customers rather than finding content, they can equally see the benefits very, very quickly as a whole.
Got it. Yeah, that makes tons of sense. Let's do maybe 2 more questions. What would you say to product marketers that want to work more closely with sales teams on enablement content? Maybe like an example that really sticks out to you from working with so many different types of groups.
Yeah, I'd give the example of the campaign we've just launched and talked about. So we kicked off that campaign by setting a crew together, sales enablement and product marketing team involved as a whole. And I think because we had a clear mission and strategy on that, and I think, again, it's being very clear what are your strategic initiatives you're working towards, and do your goals all align? Because I think sometimes it's the case that enablement, sales, and marketing can be in a different area. And I think when you have strategic initiatives where they're and you all have those goals and a kind of cross-functional crew is set up, that can make all the difference from being on the same page. I think the challenge is more when you have strategic initiatives and people come in later. So I think having a model that enables you to do that, and again, things like our sales play, we get enablement, sales, and marketing involved, so everybody has a seat at the table from the outset.
Nice, yeah, that is a great example. Okay, last question. how do you avoid, this is a great one. How do you avoid duplication when content is in a sales enablement tool, but other teams outside of revenue can't access it?
Oh, that's a good one. So, well, because we use AI, it shouldn't be, we use Spot, so we don't have tagging, so it shouldn't come up if you're using HighSpot. I'm going to do a small plug there. But so it sounds like the revenue teams aren't able to get access to your sales enablement tool. Well, I'd probably say you need to change sales enablement tools with that one to make it work, but that's my bias. But yeah, I think you need to find different ways to do that and maybe find a tool that works for all within it.
And in the case where you can't necessarily get everyone onto one tool, how do you do maybe stakeholder management or other ways of making sure people are staying up to date on the content?
Yeah, I think, well, if they haven't got access to the tool and you're able to share it, I mean, for me, it's the analytics. Being able to take even a screen grab of that and show the difference is extremely powerful. So I think, again, I mean, how many PowerPoints has everyone created to show how something is working? You can go straight to the tool and show the impact because it isn't a tool, the analytics, where IT have access. Everyone has access within it, so you can share even though someone may not have a license.
Nice. Okay. Thank you so much. This was great. Let's give a round of applause to Nikki Dawson.
Thank you. Thank you very much.